E360 TV proudly presents messages of inspirational stories. Live streaming now to millions of devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, with your host, Donna and Jim, producer and host, Jim Grant, producer and host, along with Michaela Vidal, administrator and host, and Gaia Ginwa Balconi Wada, editor-in-chief.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Messages of Inspirational Stories. Well, Jim, today's Friday, and we're wrapping up our week on living with mental illness.
We certainly are. And today's Friday the 13th, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't know if you're superstitious or not, but we are not superstitious at all. All this garlic you see hanging behind me is just...
That's for werewolves, you silly man.
Oh, is that where? Well, it takes care of those too, you know. Oh my goodness gracious! And I got to share a few things here about National Today.
Oh,
my
yes.
Goodness gracious, we hadn't done that in a while, Donna.
No, we haven't.
Today is the National Fruit Cocktail Day. Mercy.
Oh, that was a treat growing up to have fruit cocktail.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And going right along those lines, today is the National Apple Pie Day.
Okay, now you're talking to me.
There we go. There you go. And, you know, when kids used to play, jump frog, leapfrog and all that, Today is National Frog Jumping Day. So, oh my goodness. It's so much fun to take a look at these national holidays and, how people come up with these things, because evidently it's either a cause or a passion for them. But Donna and I are so glad to be with you today on this Friday and to share some great information, not only about recapping what we did over the last couple of days, talking about mental health issues, coping with it, being honest, sharing, and just providing good old-fashioned, support for the individual. That's critical. But we're also going to talk about some positive things that we can do for our bodies and our minds and our health overall.
Absolutely.
And Donna, we were blessed to have Gaia with us over the last couple of days. Gaia Ginwa, your daughter,
yes.
Beautiful young lady. She does a wonderful job for us here, but in behind the scenes, my goodness gracious. We know she did a wonderful job in the last couple of shows, and that's just a snapshot of how good she is.
Absolutely. She is amazing. And yes, I'm not just saying that because she's my daughter, folks.
It's truth. It's truth. Yeah. And very, very brilliant when it comes to things, the technical things behind the scenes that I mentally struggle with,
She will talk on the phone and she's like, okay, I'm working on this, and she'll be talking about the website she's building, and I'm like, and she's going into she's going to all this stuff, and I'm like, and I let her talk, and about 2.5 minutes later I'm like, she's like, it doesn't make sense, does it? I said, no. I said, how about I start talking about a recipe and how to make it? And she's like, okay, that's fair, Mom.
Yeah, because she hits the whitecaps when she's going across the lake of her knowledge. Right. She hits the whitecaps because that's how brilliant she is. And we're just so honored. I was so glad that she wanted to be on the show with us and share some things about dealing with anxiety and things of this nature, because we all have anxiety to some degree. I mean, it just, depending on what's going on in your life, we all need someone that, that cares about us in our hour of need. We all need that.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into that in detail a little bit later in the show. But, so let's recap with when you were doing the show with Gaia and I wasn't there. Let's recap a little on that.
Well, Gaia carried the show, so that's the recap from my side. No, but I shared openly, how traumatic brain injuries can affect people's lives without you knowing it.
Right.
I shared how we lost my son-in-law to suicide, and at the time, he was tested by doctors. He was evaluated. There was nothing that raised a red flag.
Right.
It was kind of like when I was in the hospital with my heart condition. I had the Widowmaker. They did 67 tests on me in the week and during the weekend from Friday night till I had my first procedure on Monday. And that's when they discovered I had the Widowmaker.
Right.
And I asked the doctors, I said, what kind of a test could I have asked for that would have detected that? Because that's hereditary. I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I had it either, obviously. And there was none. And the same is true with traumatic, traumatic, I forgot the word.
Traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah. The traumatic, it's called,
In something.
Yeah, it's encephalopathy. I'm trying to think of the actual term of it. Goodness gracious. It's got to be Friday. I'm brain dead after all the work we've done. But the person becomes very confused in their mind. Football players are notorious for having this, suffering from this chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Thank you, brain. At least it's working right now. So I'm on a
Got
roll.
in first gear this morning.
There we
Or
go.
this afternoon. Whatever it is. It is Friday, folks. I'm still drinking coffee. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's the reason why Donna likes to do this show. She can drink on the job.
mhm.
And we're both coffeeholics. We found how much we love coffee when we were in Tomball, Texas. But football players suffer from CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and boxers suffer too.
And just traumatic accidents. So, it just
TBIs.
triggered something. When I was much, much younger, a young girl, I took Aikido. And I
Martial
had
art.
a amazing sensei. I mean, this guy was so good, a cat couldn't sneak up on him. I mean, it was amazing what he could do. And he went to Japan and studied under the masters. Well, he learned to fly a plane, and then that wasn't enough. He decided he was going to take up flying helicopters. So he then was teaching people, how to fly helicopters because he really loved it. And he had a student, and they went up, and they only went up about 25, 30 feet in the helicopter, and it came down. There was honestly, I don't remember exactly what happened, but obviously there was a malfunction, and it came down to the ground and crashed. And that helicopter accident, from not, super far, right? It caused him to have, he had a huge goose egg. He had a bad concussion. And he was so dang stubborn, he wouldn't go and have it checked out. And looking back now, he had traumatic brain injury because this was a man who was a walking weapon. I mean, he could take anything and make a weapon of it. I've seen him take 6 people on at one time. And he became paranoid and started carrying a gun around with him, that people were after him, and he eventually took his life.
Oh my goodness, yes, because that's what happens. The pain, the darkness, and there's no way
the confusion.
out. Yes.
And confusion. Let's talk about that a minute.
Yeah, because like Mark was my son-in-law, he was diabetic. And he would go there and check his blood sugar, and all of a sudden he'd be standing there and looking, and Lisa would say, "What are you doing?" He says, "I don't know if I've checked my blood yet or not, my blood sugar or not." And that's how quickly he could get confused.
Right.
And, the living pain that they go through. And doctors couldn't find anything wrong. And to back then, this was in 2013, I don't know how it is now, but back then, the only way CTE could be diagnosed is post-mortem. Well, a lot of good that does for the family. And see, we didn't know anything about it. We knew he had a couple of concussions, but we didn't really realize how severe they were. Oh, two concussions we know of from two car accidents.
Not to mention maybe football.
Oh, yeah. He was a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And he tore up his knee at Florida State, and that's what ended his football career. But, the thing being is that when you go through something like that, the tremendous guilt that you feel. And I want to say this in case someone out there is, can say, Jim, I can relate to what you're saying, went through the same thing. Love yourself and forgive yourself, because deep down inside in your heart, you weren't a mean person. You were just ignorant and didn't know. And that's what you do in all situations. When you're ignorant of something, or if you don't know and you make a mistake, love yourself, forgive yourself. And if it's available or if necessary, whatever, apologize to the individual and let it go.
And I've said it many times on the show, Jim. I'm a firm believer in grace. Give yourself grace and give the other person grace. And I honestly feel, especially when we're struggling, like with mental illness, okay, we do not give ourselves enough grace to say, you know what, I am doing the best I can today.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if that means that you got up and you made yourself something to eat and you got dressed, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Give yourself the grace that you need.
Yeah. Just be thankful, because there's a lot of people who can't get out of bed.
Right.
A lot of people can't dress themselves due to, physical limitations or whatever. But, whatever you can do, be thankful for that. And like I told people, be thankful for the heartbeat in your veins and the breath in your lungs. Those are both gifts from the Creator. They really are. You can't buy them in a store.
Nope.
And it's funny how the only thing we value in life are the things that we can buy with money.
Right.
That's pitiful, but it's true. It really is, because our intelligence, the gifts that we have physically, all those things, these were gifts that we were given when we were created. And it's our responsibility to share these gifts with others. I think that's why that Donna and I literally backed into this TV show and came together, was because there was a higher calling for us to come together and to share knowledge on a wide variety of topics, as we already have on this show, and we will continue to do so. But I think that was our calling, and it's our responsibility to just be a good servant.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in sharing, Gaia was very open and honest too. And this shows a tremendous amount of courage on her ability to talk about she lives with anxiety and she deals with that. And this is something she recognizes. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, she had the courage. The first time on our TV, on any TV that I'm aware of, she had the courage to share this with you folks out there in TV land. Mm-hmm. And you got to respect that, because everything she said came from the heart, from her life.
Absolutely. And, and it's, I'm extremely proud of her, and I'm extremely proud of the fact that she doesn't shy away from it. She doesn't hide it in a closet like it's some taboo thing. And nobody with mental illness should. We talked about that.
Not at all.
It just wrinkles my feathers sideways when people act like you've got the bubonic plague because you have mental illness. And and that is not something that we can help. It is an imbalance of chemicals in our brain.
Exactly. It can be hereditary. It could be a lot of things.
ADD, ADHD, same thing. It is a chemical imbalance in our brains and how it fires.
Don, I'm glad you said that. That reminded me of Joel Peterson. We've had him on the show various times. He calls himself the professional patient. Joel got so bad with PTSD. He served in the military, multiple tours of duty overseas. He was in the Marines. He got so bad, his mother had to feed him, even though physically there was nothing wrong. But And then in the studies that he has brought out working with this doctor, I can't think of his name right now, but years of study, years of research, years of what I call good old fashioned sweat equity, they find out that PTSD is not mental, it's physical. That really shocked me when Joel shared that with us. Because if you're out of balance with your chemistry inside your body, goodness gracious, we all know that the gut, the heart, and the brain have to work together in perfect harmony. And so therefore it makes sense if you're out of balance with something in your minerals, your
Throws
lack
everything
of vitamins.
else out of balance.
Yes, ma'am. It's like putting dirty water into your gas tank and expecting your car to run.
Right.
It just can't do it. It just can't.
Right. And one of the things we wanted to start off the show today about, folks, is we're firm believers in taking good quality supplements.
Yes, ma'am.
We absolutely are. And here's the reason. And I've had my own health and wellness business for, Pete, I think about 18 years now. But the problem is that our soil does not, we are deprived of the nutrients in our soil from a multitude of things. They're overworked, the pollution, you name it, the acid rain. We could go on and on about that. But statistically, and I believe this was like 5 years ago, statistically, if you went back like 50 years and you had one bowl of spinach that you produced and pulled out of the ground and ate, the equivalent to eat that now would have been 5 years ago or so, would have been like 20 bowls.
Wow.
To get the same amount of nutrition. So, we are hardcore believers about, giving our bodies that boost because we are not getting enough nutrients out of the soil in our food. And one of the huge things that you can do is vitamin D. Right? So here's like, okay, when I started undergoing the battery of my tests in the onset of finding out I had MS, that's one of the markers they look for, right? Is where your vitamin D levels are. Now, I absolutely adore the sun, right? My husband says I'm part lizard because it can be 115 degrees outside. And I'm out there going, yeah, the sun's out and it's shining and I'm happy. But even though, and I tan well and I love the sun, I do not absorb the vitamin D I should. My body doesn't maintain it. And one of the markers they found was I had almost non-existent vitamin D levels. And they immediately put me on 50,000 I believe it's micromilligrams of vitamin D a week just to start building my vitamin D up. And I have to maintain that. Now, here's the scary part. And then I'll hush up and let you talk about it. Because, Jim, I know you have extensive knowledge in all kinds of herbs and vitamins and whatnot. But 1 billion people have low vitamin D levels. And this is found in all ethnic ages and groups. The available reviews illustrate the lack of data in most countries, particularly population representative data, with very limited information in infants, children, adolescents, and pregnant women. That's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And it's kind of like going across the desert and you don't have enough proper coolant in your radiator. Your engine's going to overheat and it just really complicates everything else. It breaks down the oil in the engine and all that. And it can also create serious damage to the vehicle, mechanical damage. But Donna, I did about a 10-year personal study into the world of herbs and natural cures. And this is because of something that happened to me in the 90s when I came down with something and no one The doctors couldn't find anything, x-rays, all the tests, and they were perplexed, and they kept giving me, different type of shots. And, I got tired of my, pardon me, ladies and gentlemen, but I got tired of my tail feeling like a pincushion. And, so I decided there's got to be a better way, because I tripped across this guy who was a pharmacist, but he was also a nutritionist. He started teaching me some things. I'm going like, wow, really? So that's why I dove into it. Now, let me give you a warning, a couple of warnings. Number one, whenever you see a subject matter expert on TV saying, this is the fountain of youth, this is the new thing, yada, yada, yada.
This is the cure-all for the everything all.
That makes me shudder, because it just drives a multitude of people to get it. And see, the rule in life is what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. I learned that the hard way, because back in the early 80s, there was a big push on garlic.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And people would say, oh, excuse me, I got garlic breath.
Right, got to take my garlic pills.
Yeah, man, get out of here, and take that weasel breath and go on down and go somewhere else. And Evelyn said to me, he says, Jim, I think we should take garlic. And I said, I'm not taking that stuff. People have horrible breath, for goodness sakes. And she found some that had, I think it was rose hips. Don't quote me on that, but she had an ingredient to where it squelched the foul smell coming out of your breath.
And pores.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And pores. I mean, that stuff just.
That'll light up a room.
Oh, yeah. And so we started taking it. Now, about the same time, I had bought a couple of flea and tick collars for my 2 dogs. And I put the flea and tick collars on. About the same time, same day or so, we started taking the garlic. And I broke out in a huge rash on the right side of my neck. And my skin turned just red, and it got thick like leather, and it itched. Yeah, it was horrible. And so Evelyn told me, she says, why don't you stop taking garlic? And at that time, since I'd heard so many good things about garlic, my brain told me, this is why you don't listen to your brain. My brain told me, well, it can't be garlic.
Right.
Everybody says it's great for you. So in my reasoning, with my mind, this is why we talk about follow your heart, not your mind. Mm-hmm. I concluded that possibly I got some of the chemical off of those collars under my fingernails, and I scratched my neck.
Right.
That's what it had to be. So I told them, she says, just stop taking garlic. So I did. And 3 days later, this stuff would itch, and it was miserable. And so after 3 days of being off of it, my neck just started clearing up, and it was gone. So then I started taking the garlic again, and
boom, came right back.
I was allergic to garlic. I don't know if it was that particular brand, if I was taking too much or whatever, but anyway, what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. Now, the second warning I want to share with you, and I know Donna's fully in agreement with this, there's a principle in life. Cheapest is never the least expensive.
Well, I've heard this saying, and I kind of love it. And we've talked about this on previous shows. I'm very careful with what, our money is spent on. But this says it all on certain things. Cheap ain't good, and good ain't cheap.
What she said. But whenever you're looking for vitamins and supplements and things of this nature, in my studies, it appeared, let me say that, very strongly it appeared, that some of the people in that industry, they do not sell the quality that they proclaim is in the contents of their bottle.
Or it's inferior. So let's just take calcium. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's calcium up here. This is the really good stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you get the bottom of the barrel that's got all the extra in it.
Yeah.
Well, as long as it has the calcium in there, it can be regulated through the FDA, and it's saying, well, that's a calcium, but it's not the quality of calcium that you're looking for, which is oftentimes why doctors will prescribe certain vitamins over the counter if you're deficient in them, et cetera, because you're getting the quality that you need.
Exactly. You're exactly right there, because another thing too in packaging, and this applies to all kind of products, okay? Especially food products is what I'm talking about, is when you pick up something and you see, because you know, hey, that's an additive. But the company that is selling that, they had it bottled over here at this company that makes this product. They put their label on it, and they can say no preservatives, additives, and that's legal because they didn't add anything.
Correct.
So you got to watch out for that. And we recommend, very highly recommend, Donna and I, we buy our vitamins and supplements from a very well-known source.
Over 30 years.
Yes. These people are proven to be the best. We're not going to mention their names because we're not going to hawk or recommend anything, but do your research online. Look at the reviews and look at the history of the company.
Right.
Check with the BBB, the Better Business Bureau, to see if they've had any, people file a complaint against them. Because it doesn't cost anything to file a complaint and say, hey, these people lied about this, or these people proclaimed this, and I found this. So do your work on it. If you see, if you're going to buy, and I'm just going to throw some prices at it. If you're going to buy something that's $12.99 here, and you see it $4.99 there, you think, wow, that's whatever it is, same brand, same everything. I mean, not same brand, but same, vitamin
same
or
amount.
whatever. Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm going to save myself $8. Well, why waste, why waste $5 buying it plus shipping if it's not worth it?
Right. Right.
That's just, my highly recommendation to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to talk just a skosh more about vitamin D. And it's really kind of interesting because I'm a fairly well-educated woman. But when my vitamin D was non-existent at 48, I did my due diligence and I researched everything that vitamin D touches in our body. And literally, folks, it touches just about everything that runs through our body. It works, on brain function. It works on your energy. It helps balance things. It is amazing what vitamin D does. But we have an issue here worldwide with vitamin D deficiency. And it says that even a deficiency issue residing in countries with low latitude, where it was generally assumed that the UVA or UV radiation was adequate enough to prevent this deficiency. And as industrialized countries where vitamin D fortification has been implemented now for years. So like I live in Arizona, okay? And the big joke for us who live in Arizona, especially if you're buying plants, you go to the plant store, it says, oh, that's good for full sun. Okay, there's normal full sun, and then there's Arizona full sun. Big difference. But even here, as much as I'm outside, I do not absorb vitamin D. And vitamin D can lead to a lot of mental illnesses. I know yesterday, Gaia touched on this, on seasonal depression. Okay, that's lack of sun. So, yes. and it's a very severe thing. And a lot of people who live in areas, I'll just use Seattle. I used to live in Washington, loved it.
Oh, man.
And it didn't bother me because I had grown up here in the desert. So going to Washington and seeing all the green and the rain and all of the newfound experiences was amazing for me. But people who live there often have to have a sunlight in their home, or they'll have all the lights on in their home because they need that light, right? And their lack of vitamin D, because it's overcast probably 85% of the time there.
I remember we did a summer camp at Fort Lewis, Washington, and it was overcast and cloudy and rainy. Because in those days I lived in Arizona, so we went up there, and I remember one of the guys complained. He says, "Man, I can't live here. It's always, it's cloudy. It's this, it's that." And he says, "I need the sun." I said, "Well, I feel the same way, because with vitamin D, it's very, very important. Vitamin D is needed to keep your body functioning very, very well." Now, this is coming from the Cleveland Clinic. This is a study. These people they do great studies and things like that because they're a clinic. And they talk about how vitamin D helps keeping your bones strong. And they emphasize that it may help prevent some cancers.
Also, hypertension, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome.
A lot of things. But they said some of the symptoms of vitamin D deficiency, it can include right away, if you're noticing this, if you got muscle weakness, if you feel tired, if you have pain and fatigue and depression, these are all warning signs, excuse me, that you have a vitamin D deficiency.
Well, Jim, when they put me on that vitamin D when I was 48, I did not know, to be honest with you, I did not know I was tired because I had been living with this for so long, right? I just figured it was my natural thing. And, I'd be tired, but that was just normal for me. So I would just kind of gut through the day. And after I had been on the vitamin D for about 2 months, my energy level literally, folks, went from here to here.
One of the things I was reading up about vitamin D, I hadn't thought about, but it just kind of like popped up there when I was glancing over and going, whoa, really? It helps prevent falls.
Yeah. And bone fractures, osteoporosis.
Yeah, because preventing falls tells what? It helps you with your balance.
And your bone density.
Yes, absolutely. But keeping from falling, that's the main thing. That's the main objective. Because in looking at this here, what are some of the health effects of vitamin D deficiency? Again, this is from the clevelandclinic.org. Right. You can look this up for yourself. They talk about some of these conditions may include heart disease and high blood pressure, diabetes, infections and immune system disorders, falls in older people, I just mentioned, some types of cancer such as colon, prostate, breast cancer, even multiple sclerosis. Vitamin D, it'd be a shorter list if we talk about the things that it does not help. Right. And to find that short list, I haven't been able to find one yet.
I haven't either, and I've searched a lot.
Yeah, because vitamin D comes from the sun naturally, but we need to make sure we're taking a good quality amount of vitamin D. And there's been some debate, but the fact of it is, I think you take about 20,000, is it ICs or whatever they call those?
Yeah, I take about 2, 4, 6, 10. I take about 10 to 12 a day because my body can't maintain it on a normal basis. Now, I will say this. Some people have to be careful, and this would need to be checked by a doctor because you can over vitamin D yourself, and that can lead to a few other health issues. So make sure that you check with your doctor and you have a good blood, a CBD run, so you have a good baseline to go off of.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Go to your doctor and say, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. Get a good baseline. And then do it moderately. And then in 90 days, go back and get another check and see if you're improving or if you're, and of course, the way you feel is going to tell you a lot too. Plus, it helps with thinking in your mind. Think about that.
It absolutely does.
But when you said about 10 to 12, are you talking about tablets or
Units. So
units?
mine are just like yours are 2,000.
2,000. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I
Yeah.
take about 10 to 12,000 units of those a day.
Yeah. And and the thing about it is that, when you take a little more than the recommended amount, you be sure and let your doctor know that.
Mm.
But I recommend starting at the recommended amount and then inch your way up. And do this very slowly, because let's be honest, you didn't get in that condition overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. We live in a society where give me a pill, make me better, and I'm out of here. Well, that's a pipe dream. It doesn't work.
Right. Right.
It just doesn't. And but because when you talk about your health, you're talking about creating a lifestyle.
Oh,
That's why you walk. That's why you exercise. That's why you do the things in your life. You eat well and that sort of thing to be able to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And that's what vitamins and supplements do. Your
right.
first defense is good nutrition.
Your first defense is your body's ability to reject things that come in. And that's why we need to eat good. That's why we need to sleep good. That's why we need, to get rid of stress. Stress is a huge factor in everybody's life, let alone mental illness.
Yeah, because stress leads to a lot of things. It just is the foundation. It just builds on from that.
Absolutely.
And stress has got to be something you got to be honest about it and recognize it. And a lot of people release stress by exercising or whatever. But you gotta, I gotta tell you about Donna here. She'll be more than happy to give you a 30-minute consultation on finding out what's blocking you in your life. Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a thing? Because if you're dealing with stress and your program is that every day I go to the gym, I work out, or every other day, whatever, and I wake out of sweat and I get all the stress release. Well, if it keeps coming back, you're out of balance.
Right.
Something's going on in your life that needs to be addressed. Because let me ask you a question. How important is your health to you?
How important is your health to those that you love?
Yeah, them too. You. Yeah, exactly. Because it'll domino over. But I like to narrow it down right to what's in it for me,
Right. Right.
But and it's okay to be selfish in that particular area, because as long as you share your blessings with others, then you're not selfish. Then you're sharing great information, just like we do here on the show. And I just also like to take a moment, if I may, Donna, to say to the ladies and gentlemen out there that watch the show, thank you so very, very, very much. Because our show is just continuing each month to grow and grow and grow.
And we couldn't do it without you.
Yeah. And in teasing, people ask me how do we do it? And I said, well, it's all Donna's fault. Don't ask me,
You're silly. You're silly.
But the main thing is, you notice how much we laugh on this show. Laughter is a good medicine to take, and it won't cost you anything.
Yep.
It won't cost you anything. And it's okay to
releases amazing endorphins.
It sure does. And it's, just look at it like this. I look at things kind of simple. Every living thing on planet Earth needs nourishment to live. From the molecular level all the way up to giants, okay?
Right.
And if you look at it like that and understand that and embrace that, understand that cancer has to have nutrition to grow. Think about that. So if you change that environment and rob it of its nutrition, what's it going to do? I mean, that's a proven fact. It really is.
I kind of relate it to this, as parents, we don't want our children to have a consistent diet of, say, a fast food hamburger joint. right? Where there's increased fats, there's increased sugar, and there's
Mm-hmm.
increased salt in those products.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we know, right, that that's not the healthiest thing for us. So as a treat, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Same being said, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is where we're at with our mental health, right, Jim?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sure is.
So, supporting mental health. Oh my gosh, Gaia just hit it out of the ballpark. But, really, one of the most important things that we can do if you see a change in a loved one, whether they be a younger child or an adult, is kind of keep an eye on that and do a timeline and then be able to sit down and say, okay, this is going on. This is what I've seen over the last X amount of time. I
Mm-hmm.
think something's going on that we need to get you in and get you to a doctor and get some help. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, helping them, support them by identifying what's wrong, that they need help. That is always and first,
Mm-hmm.
the foremost step to take.
Mm-hmm. It really is, because you need to have a good test for a baseline to see if your body, your bones are weak because of lack of calcium. Okay, that is a starting point to help supplement that and help get you back to where your body desires to be. Because what may be a good teaspoon for you, I may need a tablespoon.
Right.
So you want to make sure you communicate with your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Be sure and let them know what you're doing. That's why whenever they give you a prescription, they tell you right there on the prescription, be sure and let your doctor know what other medications you're taking, because the chemicals could, you know,
Interact
yes, ma'am.
and counteract each other.
Oh, yeah.
So, that was a case scenario with my father, who was on 18 different medications when he died. And he was on a numerous amount of medications to counteract the other medications that he was
Oh,
on. Right. So it can be a very vicious cycle.
mhm.
So, in taking care of our bodies, and that helps take care of our mental health. But,
Yes.
Jim, let's jump in. Gosh, our show time is almost over, not yet, but close. But let's talk about the supporting people with mental illness,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So, in first of all, being there and helping them understand that maybe they need to get checked out by a doctor. That's first and foremost.
Mhm.
And I think one of the most important things that we can do is, and we talked about this yesterday, but Jim, really do it from a place of love
Oh, yeah.
without making that person feel inferior
Hmm.
or feel, you know, um, kind of like,
Yeah.
they're piranha in society, because that is not the case at all.
You're exactly right. Because when we look at ourselves and our lives, all of us, we have shortcomings, faults, deficiencies. I mean, I look at my life and some of the things I did, not intentionally to hurt someone, but just did through ignorance or something like that. And I'm like, my goodness gracious.
Right.
I wish I hadn't done that. But that's where Donna talks a lot about grace. Give yourself grace.
That's important.
And when you make a mistake, so what?
Hmm.
Love yourself, forgive yourself, give yourself grace, and go to the person if necessary, or if it's applicable, and just say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong."
Okay.
That's one of the things that I forget who I was listening to a professor. He's talking about some of the hardest things for people to do is to say the words, "I'm sorry, I was wrong."
Hmm.
What is so
Hmm.
hard about that if it comes from the heart?
Right.
You know.
And and that's something that I know for a fact, Jim, that people with mental illness struggle with.
Mhm.
They tend to apologize a lot because they're not
Mm.
able, they're just not in that space to be able to maybe go out. They'd planned, say, a month ago, we're going to have a night out. We're going to go get, dinner and some laughs and what have you. And then that day comes and they can't go.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I am a firm believer Very few things in life need to be said, I'm sorry about.
Mm-hmm.
And when you deal with mental health, it is important to let that person know that sorry isn't needed, because
Mm-hmm.
they are just trying to take care of themselves. Because
Yeah.
when they consistently say that, or you consistently expect them to say it, that puts that negative connotation back into their brain. I hear Dixie. I hear, that negative connotation that they're doing something wrong. And they are
Mm-hmm.
not doing anything wrong, not one
No.
thing.
No, because a lot of times they're put into a position that they feel like, I'm not comfortable with that. And thinking about it just increases their anxiety. And so,
Absolutely.
and so then that's when you need to say, hey, it's not an issue.
Right. No
I love you.
worries.
I love you. Don't worry about that.
You take
No?
care of you.
Yeah.
So, and being there for that person, if you can be there for them
Mm-hmm.
physically, check up on them, bring them their
Mm-hmm.
favorite dessert, bring them whatever,
Yeah.
just sit with them. But get them, sometimes just being in that presence is huge. And
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
touched base a little bit about this yesterday, So, and if you have a loved one who is not live where you're at and they're far away, you know what? Pick up the phone right here. Pick this up and call them or text them
Mm-hmm.
and say, hey, I'm thinking
Absolutely.
about you. How are you doing? Do you
Yeah.
need to talk?
Absolutely. You heard Dixie crying earlier. What she does, she grabs her toy, she drags it across the floor because she wants me to play with her with the toy. And I'm on TV, Dixie. So what?
Yeah, right.
I'm important. But,
Right.
when it comes to, helping someone like that, just let them know that, hey, last minute changes or something like that is not an issue. It's not a problem. We'll get together and we'll go out and have a cup of coffee, or we'll do something just me and you.
Mhm.
And that's so critical. Take them off the hook is what we're saying,
Right.
because they'll
Right.
automatically hang themselves on the hook. And recently, Naomi Judd, she suffered from depression and
Oh,
anxiety,
for
and
over 25 years.
the pressure of her having to face and deal with something, even though she was a star, to be elected into the Country
Country
Music
Music Hall of
Hall of
Fame.
Fame. I don't know if that had to play a part of it, but there was something there that just really built up, and I admire her family for saying she suffered from the depression for many years, and
Well, she wrote a book about it too.
yes, she did. Yes,
She
she
wrote a book
did.
about it. And when her and Winona stopped touring
Mhm.
together, she went into a severe depression for 2 years.
Yes, she did. Bless her heart. Mm.
Mhm. 2 years. So,
Mm.
here's the bottom line. Let's love each other and help each other up,
Mm.
because some of us have better days than not. Like we talked about yesterday on this show, I don't have anxiety and depression in a chronic basis, right? It's
Mhm.
just not make up in my DNA. Okay. But I'm there to support my daughter,
Mhm. Sure, sure.
and I can empathize with her to some degree because of certain things I've gone through in my life that have, that moment, that period of time was had me anxious and had me in depression. But the difference is the way I'm made up, I don't live there,
Mhm.
right? And that's the difference. So I have some empathy with her, but I don't completely understand it. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to say, don't act like you do if you don't,
Yeah, be honest
right?
about it. Mhm.
Don't act like you do if you don't. If you do not
Mhm.
understand it 100%, it's better. It's been my experience. It's
Mhm.
better to say, gosh, I don't totally understand everything you're going through, but I certainly am here for you in
Yeah,
whatever way I can help you.
and that's the correct approach there, Donna, because they will appreciate the fact if you say, "Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't understand it, But I do know one thing, that I love you and I care for you.
Absolutely.
That, that bridges the gap big time there.
Mm-hmm. It
And
does.
you may hear the window over there. We
The
got a
birds
mill.
again.
Yeah, that little guy drives, and he's getting to the point of being obnoxious. He sees his reflection, and we got these big, glass windows here in this big day room. I got a corner here that I have my studio in, and he flies up there and pecks at the glass. Flies up there and pecks at the glass.
He's
And
narcissistic.
yeah, I tell you, he's and the little guy is gregarious as can be. He's a male cardinal. He hasn't fully turned all red yet. He's still got some brown feathers. He's slowly getting more redder.
Red.
But he'll land on the flower pot out there about 3 foot away, and he'll just stand there and look at you like, "Who are you?" I mean, because usually you walk towards your window and a bird's sitting there, they'll fly away. Not him. Not him.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's so important to walk a mile in their shoes. I mentioned Joe South's song. Number one song, I believe it was number one in 1969. Joe South, South, walk a mile in my shoes before you criticize and accuse.
Right.
That's good advice for all of us, including yours truly.
Well, we talked about this yesterday. We just touched on it with Gaia in asking. So somebody who suffers with mental illness, it's important to ask them when they're not in that deep, hard moment of suffering from depression or anxiety or whatever type of mental illness they have. But when they're in a better state of being, to be able to sit down as their support person and ask them, okay, when you are in this, or this, what is the best thing I can do to support you? Tell me what I can do for you. Don't assume that you know when you aren't dealing with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And not one shoe fits all. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday too, Jim. So you may have anxiety. I may have anxiety, but it could be different anxieties. What works for you wouldn't work for me. Right? So it's really, really important as a support person to get them to say, would it be a cup of tea? Would it be, me to bring you lunch? If they like to garden, can I bring some plants over? We'll go out and garden together. Yeah. Whatever the case may be.
Or can I just come over and sit with you and just be, just be an ear if you want to say something, whatever, because everybody's different. And when you were talking about that, I'm not going to mention any names, but Donna and I were on a show with 2 other individuals, and the one individual is a very dear friend of ours who was shot in the stomach. And the other guy popped off and said, "Yeah, I got shot in the canteen when he's in the military." And our friend looked at him and says, "I did get shot."
Right.
But I mean, that was so obvious to the person who had suffered that injury that the person who popped up and says, "Yeah, I got shot in the canteen." He's phony.
Right.
And that's the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can do is to pretend
that
Yes, when you don't. Just be honest and say, "I don't fully understand this, but I would like you to know, as I said earlier, that I love you and I care for you. You're important to me." Those are very soothing words. And if it comes from your heart, which don't ever say anything doesn't come from your heart, but if it comes from your heart, it's the real you, it
makes all the difference.
Oh, yeah. That puts the icing on the cake of life right there.
And Gaia knows, I sleep with my phone beside me. Obviously, it's charging, right? It's right on my nightstand. And she knows that anytime, day or night, she can call me 24/7. Yeah. Doesn't matter. It does not matter what time. So, make yourself available. Let them know that you love them, that you care for them. That you would do whatever it is that you can do to help them.
Absolutely. And let them know they're not alone. If they have a friend, whether you're a family member or not, they need a friend. They need someone that they can feel comfortable with in their hour of need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are that person, you have that gift, you have that calling, it's your, I don't want to say responsibility, because you owe it to that person, because that's why you were given that gift, and that's why you're in that person's life at this particular time. Do not be stingy with that.
Right. Right. Well, Jim, we are out of time.
We don't have any more quarters left.
No. Didn't get to the bank today.
Mercy. That means we're financially embarrassed. But we are out of time, and because they got another show coming up. And ladies and gentlemen, we just want to thank you for tuning in. Please share these shows with others. And I put the Strangest Secret up there by Earl Nightingale. That's a great motivational. It really teaches us how blessed we are and how much resources we have at our fingertips. But please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to have you to also share those. That's our YouTube there. Just go to Messages of Inspirational Stories TV show on YouTube. Share any and every one of the videos there. We've got 10 or 12, I think. But share the videos that someone would benefit from.
Absolutely.
And because if you bless them, we've been blessed. That's why I'm asking.
Mm-hmm.
So we hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Be sure and love yourself first, then you can love others. Be sure and forgive yourself of any shortcoming, wrongdoing, or your faults, or as I like to say in my case, my ignorance. I've been blessed. I think I got my fair share of the ignorance in the family. I think I fudged in on a couple other of my siblings. But really, just be honest with yourself. Forgive yourself. Give yourself grace. And most importantly, seek ways that you can improve your life, and not only mentally, but physically, and get a cat house like Donna's got there. She's got 4 cats. And but most importantly, share your blessings with others. If you want to be blessed, look for people that you can bless.
Absolutely.
You will be blessed in abundance. We'll see you next week, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good weekend. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye, folks.